Peter. Take it away, Margaret.
Oh gosh, I didn't know that meant I'm in charge. Hey, everybody. I am Margaret Baltiera. I am the Chicago user group leader, and I am a AWS community hero. I went to reInvent this past year. Brian had a brilliant idea. Let's do something a little bit different. Let's do virtual and do like a panel reInvent recap. So here we are joining forces. Brian, who are you?
Okay, Brian Tarbox. I'm also a community hero. I run the bAWSton user group, and at the end of the night, we're going to raffle off one of our bAWSton mugs. And you may have seen that we have that Margaret actually made a great image of ducks eating pizza because, you know, Chicago pizza. So I may have to make. We should make. I'll make a mug of that because that's awesome.
Please, no one noticed that I misspelled Thursday on that picture.
What?
In the picture of the ducks eating.
I didn't notice till you just said that.
Okay, and she's frozen.
It's Thursday.
It's Thursday. That's okay. Well, it's like on the jackets, the hoodies from this year's reInvent. There's some JSON, but it has a syntax error, and we all assume that was on purpose.
Oh no.
But anyway, so I run the user group. I write Alexa skills on the side, and everybody, they're all muted, so yay. This was about my 7th reInvent, so there you go. Whoever's next.
Okay, I guess I'll go next. So, hey everybody, my name is Damian Burks. I'm based out of Dallas. I'm an AWS community builder, and I work for Citigroup. I'm a cloud security engineer there. This was my first reInvent, but I was also sponsored by the All Builders Welcome Grant to go to reInvent. So that's part of the reason why I actually went. But it was another reason why I went was because I just wanted to get more insight on AWS and really experience all the things that reInvent has to offer. So I'm excited to talk about it, all the announcements, and what I've learned. So yeah.
Hi. I'll jump. My name is Vladimir. I'm Vladimir Lebedev. I'm based in Chicago. I'm pretty new to town, so I moved here just 2 years ago. So I'm still also exploring local ecosystem. I work for, I work and I kind of run small consultancy, being AWS partner since 2018. So it's like around 5 years. And I mean, it was my second reInvent, and I am really looking into how the partners ecosystem evolves. And being a partner, I see, you know, interesting niches where, you know, partners can differentiate and help, you know, to grow the whole ecosystems. So I will be happy to answer any partner-related kind of questions or suggestions.
So we kind of very informally, that's the joy of the user group. It's informal. We have some questions as a panel. I know we have things we want to talk about and we'll discuss, but the floor is always open. Interrupt us, ask questions. If you want to raise a hand, put questions in the Zoom chat. We can, however you want to do it. I am going to play kind of MC and color commentator. So I'll jump in, and if we need to redirect or if we want to go down the rabbit hole on any topic, if anyone wants to chat me on the side and be like, I am so bored, totally fine. All the rules, no rules. So, oh, and I forgot to say, this was my 10th reInvent.
10? Wow.
10.
You are some brave souls. I've gone to 2, and I don't like the crowds. That's the only problem I have with it. I love the content. I don't love the people. I get a little anxious with that many people around.
It's funny how it's grown. The first reInvent I went, I think, was 8,000 people, and then it was 16, and then 32, and then the pandemic, and so it was 0. So
yeah.
Yeah, the first year replay was like half of like the little ballroom space where they did the keynote sessions. There's like a DJ and some arcade games. I think that was the 2 replay games I went to, and it's like, that's enough replay for me.
This time it was like 50,000 people.
I think,
I-
I think, I think 60.
Yeah,
They-
I heard 60.
Well, they say 50 to 70. I mean, officially, unofficially.
It's a big range.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, for the musical guest, I always have to text my son and figure out who it is. I mean, I remember in that first year, I was texting my son and I said, the main performer came out and he's some dude wearing this big mouse hat with X's on his eyes. And he said, oh, that's deadmau5. And I'm like, WTF?
Was
Like-
that the first reInvent, or was that like a?
No.
Maybe 4 years ago.
When's
I don't remember. So let's dive into some questions, just general. Brian, I am going to toss it over to you because you like hinted at this. You said you had a list of 5 things that you're really excited about. I was going to make you pick one, but if you have 5, what were you most excited about, the announcements or updates, and why?
Okay, well, this year seemed very much a incremental rather than revolutionary. Before reInvent actually started, a couple of us were saying, okay, everything that's not serverless is going to go serverless, and everything that can't talk to step functions is going to talk to step functions. And so it's like, okay, I will say the thing that I'm actually most excited about was announced before reInvent, which is Code Whisperer. If you haven't used Code Whisperer, you need to go use Code Whisperer. It's think of it as code completion plus Chat GPT, in that it sees what you're writing, it sees how you've been writing, and it finishes the code for you. So as an example, I write it all in Python because I've done enough Java. I can't do Java anymore. Tried Scala and it just hurt my brain. But so I'd set up some variables and then I started typing LO, and Code Whisperer said, "Do you want to write a log? Do you want to write a log statement that prints out as a nice Python F string the 3 variables you just set?" And I'm like, yes, I do. And so it's not just code completion, it's thinking about the code. And, you write a comment of describing what your code should do, and then it fills in a header and then the body. So I was playing with an inventory class and I said, write me a function that says if this item is more than $10. And it said, the function name it created was is expensive. And I said, okay, it's less than $10. And it said is cheap. And it's like, that's a level of paying attention that I just didn't expect. So this is one of the few things where I'd say you could start calling this AI. So I think that was pretty cool. And then, so that was the coolest thing I thought. And there's stuff I haven't played with yet. Pipes look cool. I do think it's funny. It's like we have batch and we have pipes. I think the next service Amazon creates should be called grep somehow. Generalized, regular something. It's just everything that's old is new. So I'll stop now.
All right, Damien, I know you are security focused. You don't have to pick security, but what were you most excited about?
So I think when I went, I didn't have any expectations when I first went to reInvent. I just was trying to soak up as much knowledge as I could. And then I realized that was a bad idea, since there were like more than 80 services that they came out with, or they had updates for. So The one thing that really registered with me, outside of security was Lambda snap start. And essentially, like I use a lot of the I use Lambda functions quite a bit in my daily life. The problem that I did not think it's only geared for Java services though. Like if you program in Java and you have like J2EE apps, oh, I'm going all the way back, or Spring Boot apps, it's a much faster thing to utilize, or a much faster service to utilize, rather than just using a plain old Lambda function, because there's this, like, I believe it's a polling mechanism that kind of keeps it, that minimizes the amount of time it takes for it to initialize. So with me, my day throughout the day, I use Python, and I thought that it applied for Python and all the other various other languages, and it turns out that it didn't, because I didn't read the fine print. But they also didn't say that when I was also in the arena where they actually were giving or announcing that service and the features. So I would say that's one of the services that I was most excited for. Um, I was actually very surprised about when they talked about the new feature, but it wasn't very useful for me unless I go back to utilizing Java. So I do have a couple of more that I was more excited for. But the from a security standpoint, Macy, they have automated discovery jobs, and I have an open source project that I developed called DataCop, which essentially relies on Macy to be able to determine what kind of files are like sensitive based on like your organization's needs. So if you have a file with social security numbers or credit card numbers and stuff like that, and you don't want it hosted in S3, it'll basically lock down your S3 bucket and tell you that, we found this in your S3 bucket. So before they came out with this automated data discovery job, or a feature that allows it to intelligently discover the data in the S3 buckets, you had to manually trigger a job each time, so it didn't discover it. So you can have like 2 S3 buckets within your environment, and one of them you just created, and they have like a million files in it, and you don't know. So
Okay, let's go
the
tomorrow.
next thing that you would have to do is,
I'm on a call right now. I can't do it. You finish your homework.
sorry.
After school, promise.
Yeah.
Whoop. Sorry, Damien, I muted you by mistake.
No, you're good.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so you have 2 S3 buckets. One bucket you can have be uploading multiple files, and unless you execute the job, Macy won't know. So essentially that feature eliminates that entire thing, and you can enable it, and it just automatically parses everything without you having to go manually execute a job against the bucket. So I like that. I think it was cool.
Maybe I will jump as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fully agree. First of all, that this reInvent was, again, as previous one, pretty incremental in terms of amount of revolutionary changes. Not that much. I mean, I cannot even recall anything that really kind of won my heart, let's say. But I would agree with Damien that Lambda Snap Start was really something that is a bit of revolutionary when you think about the way AWS approached this this technical issue, this technical kind of problem. And I really recommend everyone who is interested in this topic to really check out the actual description of how AWS, built this this service, what exactly has been done, because there are pretty interesting kind of things happening in order to implement this service. Specifically, AWS is taking the snapshot of the virtual machine after the Lambda, let's say, has initialized, after the service has been initialized, and they're taking this snapshot very granular, let's say. So I mean, for me, it's like complete magic technical magic that's happening behind, and the way it's really implemented is really really deserves some sort of mentioning. On top of my list were a couple of, I would say, enterprise, let's say, services, but still I was really looking for new announcements in this area. So specifically, I'm monitoring how AWS is developing its marketplace kind of not platform, but offering. So this, I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with this, but AWS Marketplace allows you just to grab a piece of software that doesn't belong to AWS, but like a third-party software, and just deploy it in your AWS account and use it in a way that was already packaged for AWS. So this kind of streamlines the adoption of third-party stuff within AWS ecosystem, and AWS is really growing that business very fast. I mean, I would say this year there were a lot of announcements, like Red Hat is pushing all their open source and non-open source stuff into AWS Marketplace, and lots of other big and small vendors. And this time they announced an interesting thing. So previously, Marketplace item was more like a virtual machine, like pre-packaged image, let's say, that you can, or set of images that you can kind of procure or grab, and then kind of roll out in your environment. But this time they announced that so-called EKS integration. So you can now have an item on Marketplace that is a pre-packaged Kubernetes pod, and you can directly deploy an item from Marketplace into your Kubernetes instance, which is also pretty smart kind of idea. And this can lead to very interesting, let's say, usage patterns. And the second item that I would really like to mention as well is AWS service called AWS Data Exchange. This is also pretty, I would say, unique concept, where AWS is trying to grow their ecosystem by utilizing partners like third-party data providers. And so this year they announced another, let's say, set of partners that are providing their data sets as AWS Data Exchange feeds. So for example, if you are in the fintech, you don't need to deal with third-party market data providers that would organize your feed or do some dump, of some stuff. You can go directly to, let's say, NASDAQ or CME through AWS through AWS Data Exchange service, and deal with them directly. And there are some, specific models of how this is being kind of built and something. So this is, again, like growing the ecosystem by utilizing partners, third-party partners. And this is huge. I think that is something AWS is really that's the next wave of growing AWS kind of, business and ecosystems overall.
I'm still here. I just paused my video because my internet, of course, is flaking out. I don't want to be glitchy on anybody.
Sure. That's it from my
Damien?
side. I can answer any questions on the stuff that I mentioned, but I guess we have agenda to follow.
No, we have other questions, but if somebody had questions for any of our panelists, please jump in. Damien, you mentioned you had other topics too.
Oh, the one that I mentioned was Macy. But I did have
Okay.
a question for Vladimir in regards to the EKS portion. Could you just repeat exactly the EKS marketplace? So when you say it comes prepackaged, right? Like bundled together, is that more or less like the entire pod, or is it more referring to like the cluster? Or like cluster configuration? Like I'm just curious as far as like how that all is put together, how they could do that.
Well, the way right now it is, so far I have played with it and doing some sort of POCs or something.
Yeah.
And some of the software comes in the pod. So you don't need to to do any additional steps in order to integrate, or to deploy this additional pod into your existing kind of EKS cluster. You just do a couple of clicks, usually with AWS, and specify certain templated parameters, like it depends on the type of the software, the type of the product, or the type of the service that you need. So what I saw is sidecar services really fall pretty good into that model. Specifically, if we're talking about some commercial stuff, like the one that you need to configure with some licenses, with some so non-open source stuff, I would say that usually comes prepared for deployment in the EKS world.
Interesting. So I wonder, like, so I'm curious to know if which I'll probably do research on my own, but the question I have for that is more or less like, does it support private containers and being able to like directly deploy whatever type of private containers you create into the EKS clusters as well?
Yeah, so the idea is that you can become
Yeah.
a vendor in AWS Marketplace. So you can create your set of private containers, publish them in this market. AWS have some specific veto process, some specific internal checks that you're not doing anything wrong. Like there's some, there's sort of, guidance on their side as well as the checks. But any customer of AWS can access the stuff that you published and deploy it in their EKS clusters. Before that, the same concept was used more on the EC2 level. So you can download a already packaged, already configured image and deploy it on your EC2. But now they went further and they understand that not that many guys are already doing the EC2 stuff, especially kind of, if someone is already Kubernetes native, then okay, they still need to use this this marketplace. And yeah, so we're talking really about some sort of private containers.
It's interesting to see EC2 become legacy.
Yes.
I will say I've used EKS, and I'm hoping I won't be using EKS again in the future. But hey, that can be a religious battle. So I'll stay out of that. One thing I wanted to toss out, and Margaret, please interrupt me if I'm talking too much, but one of the things that sort of underwhelmed me a little bit so far was Application Composer and Code Catalyst, in that they remind me a little bit of Proton. Remember Proton from a couple years ago? It was going to be awesome. It was going to change the world. It was going to make us do everything differently. And it sort of went by the board. And they also had VPC Lattice. And a year or so ago, that was called Cloud WAN. And then it went through a couple other names before it became VPC Lattice. And so I don't think they're as bad as Google with just, killing off projects, but there are things that they toss out there and see if it works. And App Composer and Code Catalyst, maybe they're awesome, but I'm going to wait a year before I put any effort into them.
Perfect segue too, because I was going to ask, maybe what was underwhelming. It is an incremental reinvent. Just seemed to be nothing new and fancy. Like, granted, even I think it was 2-3 years ago when they come up with Deep Composer, it was like a machine learning piano. It was like, what? There wasn't. You're out of here. Sorry about that, folks.
Yeah, it's funny. I will say, as the years go by with reInvent, I spend less and less time in sessions and more time just talking to people. So it was, I actually this year I didn't go to any sessions. Went to a couple chalk talks, but mostly just talked with people, friends that I've known from around the world, heroes, community builders, just folks around the world. and it's funny because we all like, oh, I'm gonna go watch the videos for all 2,000 sessions.
And
And
then
it's
you
like,
never do.
right. You may do.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah, may do a few of them. It did seem like this year they weren't quite ready logistically to go from 20,000 last year to 60 or 70,000 this year. It's like, Margaret, next year I might skip replay because replay for this year for me at least was a dud. They ran out of food. It was slow. The buses didn't work. So
Yeah. Is it replay or is it me? Am I getting old? I went to my first couple of reInvents. I think reInvents like 2 through 6. I worked in a company that had a booth on the expo floor. So it was like all day standing. And then at the end, there's this uns dance party in a parking lot. And I realized one of my coworkers was like, yeah, I got a night flight out Thursday night. I just skip replay and leave. It's like, oh, that's brilliant. So for me, that's, it fits for me because I am an introvert. I don't want to do the loud noises. So I get to get that networking, but also kind of just skip the crazy party. But if it's your first reInvent, or if you're really into EDM, like that is amazing. So I think as it's grown, there's something for everybody too. Like now there's a 5K, there's for the people that get up at 6 in the morning, right? Did you guys get your most out of reInvent? Damien, you're nodding.
Yes, I definitely got a lot out of it. I for it to be a week in Vegas, at reInvent, and there's so much to do. The fact that they pretty much brought the strip, it was like 12 hours, 12-hour days for me. And I underestimated the amount of walking that I
Oh
was going to
gosh,
be
yes.
doing. So I did not bring any sneakers. And I regretted that
Oh,
decision.
yeah,
I regretted that decision so bad. But it was a wonderful experience, and I'm a big EDM person, so replay was definitely one of the highlights of the night, I think, or the week for me. So
we do have a question. And I think the question was also in the chat. Will Alexa Tech be incorporated in Lex? We use it to develop a bot for customer support.
Brian, I think that was meant for you.
Yeah. I think it's more like Alexa uses Lex than the other way around. It is strange. I find that Alexa is this poor stepchild of AWS. You see it less and less and less. And this year it was, I don't know if Alexa was even at the show at all. There were a couple talks, but pretty much nothing there. Alexa is definitely voice production, and Alexa uses that a lot. Alexa has the ability to do some emotions. It can be excited or it can be disappointed, but we're looking for more than that. So so that's a whole thing. If you're interested in Alexa, there's a whole Alexa Twitch on Tuesdays at noon Eastern time. That's quite good.
Oh, good. Perfect.
Yeah, I
Thanks
can
for
jump back.
updating. Yeah, the updates in the Slack. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I can jump back to kind of share my own experience of actual logistics or actual kind of arrangement. It was my actually third weekly conference throughout the year. So I attended Atlassian Summit in the beginning of the year, it was April, I think. Then I did the security stuff. I'm not sure, Damon, whether you attended DEF CON and the Black Hat Summit in August, but I was there as well. It was also weekly stuff. And then at the end of the year, it was this AWS. So for me, AWS was not that hard at all because it just, you just get used to all the, all the all the restaurants, and sometimes you even know the names of the guys who serve you. So that's good. But overall, I would say that AWS did a really good job on the logistics. For example, the food, I really liked the food, and I mean, the actual organization of how they really kind of organize the lines and the routing of people in the food court. That was really interesting, and that's, I think, it was
That
really
is an
smart.
amazing feat to
Yeah.
see. Like I always take a video, but it never captures it. It is amazing.
Are you
Yeah,
talking
so
about in
the idea is you're not really waiting. You're just being routed to the specific section of the food court, and the food is always there because you're being routed to this actual section that has just been replaced. Where the food has just been replaced by the fresh or hot portions of stuff, and yeah, and the best meetings that I had in AWS were at the food court, actually. I mean, in Renman. So yeah, I got to know lots of different folks just because, well, I mean, I'm this kind of person that I would like to talk to people, and just even during the lunch.
I do try to recommend, even as an introvert, people are a little more vulnerable when they're eating lunch, and like a lot of people are just sitting there looking at their phone because they're like a little bored. Like, that's a great opportunity to go up to somebody and be like, what was the most interesting thing you saw today? Rather than like, hey, where do you work? I've had really great experiences just randomly, even with the food. Like there's a soup that I had at reInvent one year. I've been trying to perfect it and make that soup again. It was so good.
Right.
Hello. This is Jihua from Chicago user group. Thanks,
Hey.
Margaret. I saw you many times in Morningstar when we have local meeting, on-site in-person meeting, right? Pizza meetup.
Awesome. You had the question about Lex, right?
Yeah, I saw there's an Alexa designer. So I'm really curious about that. I have 7 years experiences, but still cannot fix that. And my company hired AWS together with Genesis to help us with that kind of bot system, but still a lot of work. So I'm curious about other applications. I know maybe this meeting is only for organizer, not for like tech issue, or I can ask any question related with AWS.
Right. If you like, let me put my email in the chat. I'd be happy to please reach out, and I'd be happy to do what I can. Or I have a whole Alexa community I can ask questions from.
Okay, that'd be nice. Thank you.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
we
yeah.
like it very much. That sometimes we make some technical issue and really need to customize to our data. So thank you.
Right. No, Alexa is amazing, and except for when I want to bash it with a sledgehammer.
Like so many AWS services.
Yeah, I will say, actually, I'm just thinking back. The coolest thing I thought was Werner's keynote. I mean, it's usually, if you had to guess before reInvent, what's the coolest thing? It's going to be Werner's keynote. But if you haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It at least the first 20 minutes where he's talking about synchronous versus asynchronous, and his server is cooking one French fry and then another French fry. Brilliant, just brilliant. And so I thought that was a very compelling way to talk about it. And then the ML keynote where they are talking about connective tissue, which that made sense. And it also is like, yeah, we're not going to announce anything new. We're just going to connect everything together. So it's connective tissue.
Can't find the video fast enough, but if somebody finds it, puts it in the chat.
These two keynotes and the keynote of Peter DeSantis, they were
Peter was great.
Yeah, Peter were also great. Yeah.
I think the one of the things that stood out on Peter DeSantis keynote was the guy from Ferrari, who are basically saying how they leverage AWS services and solutions to help enhance like their Ferrari competing vehicles that they use in I think it's F1. I don't necessarily know what the what what the Grand Prix name is, but it's basically they're just like we use it to help make our drivers faster. And they even show like the big old track where they basically use AWS to like map out all the points, all kinds of crazy stuff. I just want to throw that in there too. I don't know, Vladimir, if you remember that, right?
That actually, that topic was really interesting. But
Yes.
what is more, what I can add to that is that last year, I mean, well, previous reInvent, the reInvent of 2021, the one that was the first after the COVID. So I was lucky enough to get they call it executive badge or something, executive whatever.
Mm,
So they
yeah.
had this specific executive lounge on the show, and they brought the actual Formula One car there, and that's when they announced the partnership with Formula One. So this year it was only kind of the result. They presented the results of that kind of partnership. But the announcement came a bit of before, and there was a car, and they were demonstrating the actual, steering wheel, which is very, very, very unique. Like it has something like 200 different,
Right.
well, not buttons, but different, different options to click, I would say. And each one is unique, and there are lots of customizations that each pilot can do. So like you can tune it up to your own kind of settings. And there are some macros or programming that you can do. I mean, this is pretty interesting thing. So yeah.
And I want to know, is there any coincidence that the Formula One street race in Vegas is like the week before next year's reInvent?
Wait, there's a
Is there
Formula.
gonna be some overlap?
I think I live underneath a rock. There's going to be a street race for Formula One cars in Vegas?
Yeah, I think it's
What?
the week or the same month as reInvent next year. Because I was
I
talking to a guy who lives in Vegas, and he was talking about like all the crazy logistics that the city of Las Vegas is doing, like buying city lots and constructing grandstands. So
Right. Formula One
Yeah.
is exploding in popularity. It's crazy.
so
But
if you like
but-
Formula One and you want to go to reInvent next year, like plan for a lot of
right,
there
so
is
go to the
extend your
Formula
stay,
One
right?
and then reInvent and then the rodeo.
Yeah, true. It's always followed by the rodeo.
Right.
There is also a race that is going to happen in Chicago, I think, this summer.
I think
But
it's
it's not going to be
similar.
It's not Formula One, but something a bit less kind of serious, but also interesting. Like it's going to be a city race. So
Mhm.
yeah, racing is huge.
Right. In a similar vein, one of the things that talks that I found really interesting was, I do stuff with Premier League. I've got a friend, Christian Bunzlet, who does Bundesliga, German football. We don't say that S word in my house. And they do update. They have a whole system that does updates to folks while games are happening. And we usually talk about wanting to make sure things are as fast as possible. But their system has to pay attention to the fact that sometimes the TV broadcasts are delayed. So they can't say the wow goal if it's ahead of the TV broadcast. So they have an interesting thing where they can't be too slow, but they also can't be too fast. Not something
Oh.
also has ever
Huh.
encounter.
So speaking of not being too fast or too slow, I don't know. I was trying to find a segue back to reInvent announcements. Any questions for our panelists about their thoughts or their kind of areas, or we could keep going? We kind of touched on this, but I wanted to come back around to it. Something that we hoped to see but didn't. I think I forget who kind of brought something up. Damien. Yeah, go.
So one thing I hoped to see, or some features I hope they developed for a service for, is IAM. So I know IAM is kind of like one of the very one of the most important and critical services that they have in AWS. So you would expect them to have, you know, a little feature here, a little feature there. They'll debut something cool at reInvent, even at Reinforce, but nothing. They didn't say anything, and I guess it's just kind of like, well, we know IAM is good. You know, roles, policies, users, groups. We know that. It's all that's fine. But I think they can, you know, have a little bit more. They can do a little bit more with it, you know, expand it a little bit more, you know? So
I would
that's
totally
just my
agree. I would
two
love to
cents.
have a easier user interface for IAM too.
Yes.
Like you don't have to get deep into the YAML to know what you're doing. You know, they've done the visual Lambda. Could they do something like that for IAM or just understanding your org or something like that? I'd love
Well,
that.
well, it's
Right.
funny because that's sort of what VPC Lattice, Cloud WAN, blah, 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 was supposed to be for networking. And this does tie together in that, like, if you've got two pieces and you want them to network together, you set a whole bunch of policies and rules and stuff and sort of hope that you've made them so they can, you know, connect. Whereas in Lattice, I believe, you basically say, I want this to be able to talk to this, go make it so. And I think there's been some work on doing something like that with IAM. It's like, yes, I want this user to be able to get to this folder in this bucket. I don't care from policies or roles or, you know, assumed roles or anything. Just go make it happen. That would be very cool. I will say the one announcement that I had predicted that they would make is last year I did a whole big work on S3 intelligent tiering. It actually saved my company $3 million a year. And then they laid me off. It's like, okay, awesome, thank you. I had predicted that they would make intelligent tiering the default class.
Oh, that would be great. I would love that.
Yeah.
But it's extra, right? That's how they get you. They charge you just a little bit more for intelligent tiering.
No, this is the, oh, okay. I will post in our two groups. I have a whole write-up on this in that
Yes.
you get oh God, there's so much. I have an hour-long talk on this topic, so I can't go into it. But if you have a big S3 spend, contact me. I can save you a crazy amount of money.
Oh, we will talk.
Yeah.
No, Brian, I think though Margaret, Brian, you're onto something. I actually think one of the most exciting features in S3 is its intelligent tiering. And you know, Amazon recently announced that like by default, all new S3 buckets are going to have like encryption on by default. I don't know if you heard about this. I think this was like a step in the right direction. But I really think it's kind of falling short of what S3's potential should be. And I think intelligent tiering is part of that potential. And it's just too darn expensive. So, you know, I think turning on encryption is good, making it free is good. But the next step for them, like the next level of really making people happy and changing the world, it's going to be, you know, making intelligent tiering free and available to everyone, because it's very powerful.
And I can help you with that, because what you want to use is life cycle rules, and that there is a minuscule management charge per item that's under intelligent tiering, and they will not intelligent tier anything that's less than 128K. But here's the thing: what we recommended was have a life cycle rule that makes things that are more than 100 meg intelligent tiering, because you're not going to save anything, you know, on the little guys. You want to save things on the big things. The other piece is object lock, in that one of my friends this year got nailed by ransomware and basically destroyed their company. And object lock has unbelievable power. You can actually set an object so that no one, not even Amazon, can delete it. Which is I'll send the link about that. But the other thing is there's a type of attack that we haven't really seen much, which is if you have versioning turned on for protection of your objects, a bad actor who wanted to be obvious could, you know, just delete your objects or change them. But the really clever bad actor, and I hope there's no one listening here that I'm telling you how to do this bad actor thing, is if you have versioning turned on, someone could create a whole ton of versions of the objects and increase your spend. And this is called denial by wallet.
Yeah.
But there's lifecycle rules you can do for that. Nobody knows about lifecycle rules. It's the berries. So maybe I'll do a whole, actually, I think I did a talk on this, but anyway, sorry, I'm talking too much. Oh.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
why you need to monitor your spending and have some specific triggers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have
Alerting.
to- yeah,
And
alerting.
learning and getting back to like what I was expecting. So there are a couple of areas that I wanted to highlight. So first of all, I was expecting some new announcements within the FinOps, as they call it, kind of not model, but FinOps movement or FinOps methodology. And there were a couple of things announced, not really as in terms of service, but more in terms of some implementation of different dashboards or different, analysis tools. Done by
But did you
AWS
catch the
guys.
QuickSight queue? To jump
Yeah,
in there, that was one good thing I liked.
Yeah, I mean, so FinOps, there were lots of different small announcements within this FinOps kind of, ecosystem, not ecosystem, but methodology, let's say. And those were interesting ones. Although it's not really it's more, something has changed, right? Do you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry. Zoom told me that something disconnected. So, but jumping to the stuff that I was expecting, not to be announced, but at least the area to be somehow developed by AWS. So there are three areas that I'm kind of following. It's 5G space, edge locations, and all sorts of edge kind of edge enabled services, and IoT. So this is like interconnected area of services, and not that many announcements. Like I would say within 5G space, no news. I mean, AWS announced private 5G as a service a year ago. Nothing in terms of any POCs or any customers. When it comes to edge locations, we have a couple of customers who are really waiting for some of the edge functionality to be available before they experiment with with moving some of their existing on-premises highly critical stuff. Again, nothing new from edge kind of developments. And
Vlad,
IoT,
I'm curious, do you feel like, for IoT and edge things, do you feel like Amazon was just kind of like planting a flag and they're like, we did it, we did edge, and they're not iterating as much as other features? Or where do you see the next step?
I mean, the IoT space was pretty huge a couple of years ago. So AWS announced Greengrass and a couple of other, I would say, services that they particularly target as building blocks for various IoT services or IoT products to be developed on top of AWS, including that service that simplifies communication with satellites or something like that. But it looks like there is no adoption. It looks like the customers are not really kind of moving forward to adopt those services, at least not at the pace that AWS expected it to be. And that's why I think that they put on hold some of the development efforts. Well, that's I don't, even if I had some insight, I was not able to tell you. That looks like it's that's how it is. Like they're just not really paying much attention into that space.
I'm curious. So I asked you about that, kind of like going back to what Brian mentioned about like the difference between a Google and Amazon. Google actually depreciates products, and I feel like Amazon just lets them kind of go out to pasture. There are not a lot of services that Amazon stops.
Yeah.
Although there's some that they should.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes.
But I think they end up leaving it out there as far, I think, to me what I see with Amazon. They leave it there and then come back to it later when they've matured something else that they can add to it. So that's why they're moving to this model of everything's connected and it's all interconnected because it's like they're taking ideas from one service and moving it over to the next, and then it's a lot.
It's serverless.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like if we take the example of how AWS evolves this call center or UX kind of interaction stuff. I mean, they bought this Connect stuff, then Chime. They now integrating Alexa and other stuff. And this seemed to be a space where AWS is really investing. And you see that something pops up and they release new products. And IoT was the same space with the same. I had the same impression with IoT a couple of years ago, but not now. Looks like the adoption is not there.
I had a question. Did you hear anything interesting around data or data analytics this time?
There were a couple of announcements on the Glue about AWS Glue, and looks like AWS is really positioning Glue as the standard de facto in for various ETL, let's say, stuff. Not sure. I mean, it's not definitely. It's not the answer to your question. I mean, it's like a bit of side stuff to machine learning and analytics, but still, in order to build the pipelines, you need to have this orchestration, right? You need to have not just the capacity to analyze data, but also to stream it, to feed, clean it up and something. So there were announcements on AWS Glue, integrations with S3, this pass-through stuff. Yeah, that's what I mentioned. That's what I noticed, and that's what we already started.
Yeah, there's connections, like you mentioned, all the stuff working together. I noticed with data, nothing like introducing Neptune Z or whatever. There's the Glue 4 in the chat. It is, for me, 5:57, 6:57 for some. We said this would go to the top of the hour, and there is a raffle to be had. So Brian, how do you do the raffle?
Well, and so the raffle is one of our bAWSton mugs, and I'll tell you all about the ducks. What I in the bAWSton group, I used to ask people trivia about science fiction, and people got sort of bored with that, and I didn't care. But I actually didn't think of a good sci-fi. I mean, some groups do just a random number generator. Let me ask you this: is anyone here from outside the U.S.? Because I can only ship to the U.S. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so so what we do is we ask the question, and then you put the answer in the chat, and as soon as we see your right answer, that person wins. And since I don't have a question pre-made, I'm just going to, the question will be, what's the best sci-fi show? And it's entirely up to me. And as soon as I see an answer I like, I'll give that person the mug. Because it's serverless.
It's serverless. Oh, Damien said Star Trek. Anyone else?
Oh, but is that, oh, I don't know if I'd call Doctor Who sci-fi. It's just too awesome almost. This has all happened before and will happen again. Oh, that's a great answer. Yes, there we go. Sorry, someone was paying attention. Battlestar. New or old?
Chris Kuzaka.
Old. Yeah, sorry, that's wrong.
Brian.
That's wrong. Tell you what. I'll send you both. I'll send mugs to both of you too. So $1 and Chris Groska. Send me your postal email to Brian Tarbox at Gmail, and I'll send you mugs.
Congratulations. Thank you for playing, everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. In the bAWSton group, they got the questions got like, okay, just for yuck, since we're here, which character on Fargate wasn't was a plant? What good character on Fargate was a plant?
Root.
Yeah. Zan, yeah. So, oh, Chris, yes, absolutely, absolutely, yes. Okay, all right. So as sort of wrapping up, so this was and Margaret and I are still sort of chatting about this, but since we're doing more, since a lot of these things are virtual still, combining bAWSton and Chicago seemed like a kind of interesting idea. It's a little cross-pollination. I will say that I think next month we're having, my buddy Chris Ponsolette is going to be talking about Pinpoint and all kinds of crazy stuff with Bundesliga. So if we want to do another joint meeting, I mean, we can
Sure.
chat, but I think it's awesome.
As far as meetings go, more is better. And
Okay.
then I've been working on a couple events in Chicago physically. We're going to try to do some in person as well, some hands-on like lab workshop kind of thing. So Chicago people, maybe
That would be
if
cool,
I'm
yeah.
coordinated, I could try to stream for remote people as well. We'll see.
Yeah, it's funny.
Brian, do you have a YouTube that you'll share the recording after?
Yes.
Or email it out?
Yes, yes, I'll do both. I'll do both.
Cool.
It's funny, the in-person virtual thing is so hard. It's like I don't work in Boston anymore. Boston is an hour drive for me. I don't want to go in Boston.
I have to wear real pants. Ugh.
I know, but you know, hey, I'm wearing my good sweatpants today. So I'd say, please, folks, so first, thanks to the panelists, thanks for the audience. You know, let us know in comments in Meetup or to Margaret or I, you know, what you thought, what you'd like to see more of, what didn't work. That, you know, all of that is welcome. And it's great to see some folks that I've recognized. Eric, haven't talked to you in ages. And you know,
Right.
hey man, yeah.
Sorry, I was late. I got out of a meeting, so I jumped in late.
No, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, this is sort of the cool part of society melting down, is that we get to see each other.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. Thanks panelists. I need to go. That I hear chaos happening upstairs in my house. It's good to
Okay.
see everybody.
All right, cheers.
Yeah, thanks,
Bye-bye.
Margaret. Thanks, Brian, for organizing. Cheers.
Thank
bet.
you. Cheers.